Buonasera a tutti, mi chiamo Maria Giancola, sono una artista in residenza alla Macina di Cresci. Oggi parlerò brevemente della mia arte. So I will be speaking in English and I'll go very slowly, so hopefully you can understand. So they call me M, that's a nickname I go by, and I'm from New Jersey, Stati Uniti. And I graduated from Rutgers University, and then I also went to graduate school in Michigan. It's called Cranbrook Academy of Art, right outside of Detroit. And I just graduated last year. And I would imagine that some of you may have been to New Jersey. Some of you might know of New Jersey. Maybe you heard of the Jersey Shore or the exits on the New Jersey Turnpike. And some of what you heard is true if you are familiar. Some of it might not be true. But I'm so thrilled to have gone after Nell. And I was thinking about this as Nell was presenting, how wonderful it is to present after someone who works with collage, because hopefully you'll be thinking of the same sensibility. I think Nell and I share some of the same things in common with our practices. So I brought up New Jersey because it is part of my identity, but something that is also part of my identity is my Italian heritage. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in just a minute. But I've been here at La Macina di Cresci for about 4 weeks, and tomorrow I'm leaving, sadly. But I was also here for 2 more weeks, restoring my father's house and helping him get it cleaned up. So I was there for 2 more weeks before I came here. So I'm going to chronologically talk about my work, and this is work that I completed after graduate school last year. And then I'll address later more directly some of the content in my work, such as the disintegration of the images and the body, the female body, as well as some of the material experimentation that I do in my work. So, over the past decade, I was creating collages from magazine advertisements, and they started off primarily with magazines and only magazines. And over the past years, they've evolved and they're incorporating other materials. So I've also used these for performances, for installations, and of course for paintings. And as you can see here in this next slide, you could see wait, hold on. I was going on my screen, but I was not going on here. So as you can see here, here are some of the collages that I've created. I wish you guys told me that there was nothing on the screen. So take a few minutes to look at the images and soak in what I just told you. And then I'll tell you more about them. So the process that I use to make these specific collages are I take magazines, magazine advertisements, I tear them apart, and then I put them back together in a way I feel appropriate and transfer this image to the canvas. So there's no longer paper on the canvas from the magazine, it's acrylic. And when this happens, there's a wrinkling of the surface, and I'll show a detail in the next slide. And you can see the wrinkles here on the left. Hopefully you can see some of that detail in there. So these collages are quite small. They're about the size of a magazine, the size of what they came from. And the wrinkling is part of what you could see the process in the work. So when I'm painting these, I also paint with oils as well, and the smooth texture of the oils contrasts with the wrinkled texture of the transfer process. And a big part of my work is attraction and repulsion. So inherently with magazine images, you have this idea of beauty. In these advertisements, the models are very beautiful. It's part of what draws us into looking at these images for advertisements. And a part of my work is also having that duality with repulsion as well. So this surface here and this defacement is something that's really important to my work. And the way that I deface these images, I'm hoping to criticize societal power structures, specifically ones that determine feminine body standards. And I continue to ask myself these questions about my work, and particularly my role with these collages. Am I a participant? Am I implicated? Or am I an activist? So the next slide, this is quite large. This is really quite massive. It's probably about as high as the screen is, to give you some perspective here. But the idea of collage is continuing throughout the work. So this is backtracking a little bit. This was from when I was in graduate school. I was making very large-scale collage paintings with printouts, and also a process with laser cut stencils. And the fact that they're so large really does take away from the magazine reference, but this idea of attraction and repulsion and seduction is still part of the work. And something to notice about this painting in particular is the edges of the rectangle. You could see how the image is exceeding the bounds of the rectangle. And this was a big moment in my work where the image could not be contained. The image was so strong it could not be contained within the rectangle. And paired with the text, it states, "How do you like me now?" And I don't know if it's asking myself or the viewer or everybody. I'm hoping to question these historically established regimes of beauty. So the next slide, another large-scale painting that I worked on. I used the laser cutter, this machine that uses a laser to cut out paper or any material really. And I created a stencil and pushed paint through. So what you're seeing here is a collage with painting as well. And I really do think of a lot of these as paintings, collage paintings. And you could see from the detail where some of the paint is seeping from underneath the stencil. Now, this idea of a screen is something that I wanted to create from this painting, where the viewer has to look through a screen to get at the image. And then also we have to look through this keyhole as well. And embedded into this screen, which is blocking full access to the figure and the keyhole as well, we also have text. And the text states voyeur, wow at first touch, don't get caught looking, and the time is now, capture youth. And these are all phrases from the magazine advertisements that I was using previously. Now, I started to really experiment with how I incorporated text into the paintings. And this one states, "Those pumps won't pay for themselves." And it's a little bit difficult to translate into Italian, but it's referring to the high heels, i tacchi. And it was important with this painting that with the text, that I wanted to really disintegrate the way that we read language, and how we can understand what this phrase really means. So it's quite distant from the magazine that it came from, and I'll show you details so you can get a sense. This is so you can get a sense of the idea of the collage that's still in the work. And you could see the white areas, that's where the paper is ripped. And you could also see the same idea as before, it's exceeding the edges, again, of the rectangle. So it's a very physical process. When I'm making these collages in my hands, very small scale, it's more of a handheld idea. And then when I take them and blow them up and print them out, it's a very physical process. I'm using my whole body, it's engaging the body, and even the act of experiencing the work is very different than it would be with a small scale collage. So that brings me to my current work here. And I'm realizing, as Nell was speaking before too, that although I've been to Italy quite a few times now, that this is my first time actually making art here. And I'm really excited about the work that I made here. So this is a photograph of me from last year in my father's home. And this is behind the home. It doesn't look like this anymore. And this year we had this process where I had to lift and I had to shovel sand into a wheelbarrow and then put it in buckets and bring the sand upstairs. And I did this over and over and over and over. And having this process of moving sand and actually watching masonry happening and how the mason worked with cement and plaster, it really got into my head before I came here. So I was on a mission. As I said, Italy is personal for me. It's my heritage. I'm an Italian-American dual citizen. And I've kind of considered myself an outsider in America, and I feel a little bit like an outsider here too. So I think this idea of being an outsider is something that follows me everywhere I go. But like I was saying about the plaster, it's something that I incorporated into my next body of work, and here's some other photos. The stucco from the houses, like this dry texture from the stucco, it really began to appeal to me, and I eventually began to really see myself in this place and also a lot of my work. So here's an example of a collage that I made here. And it's still super fresh to me, so I don't know if I have the words to really speak about it, but I was really freed using plaster. I used all local materials that I scavenged or purchased here in Italy. And I really felt freed by not working within the rectangle. And these are small scale because I want to bring them back to America. But something that I was thinking about here was the eyes and the mask shape. So you'll see that inside. Hopefully we'll get a good look at those. And the image on the right is an image I took last year as well while I was in Sorrento. And I think about this image all of the time, and these small talismans, I think about them all of the time. And I think that the smaller scale works remind me of these small talismans that I'm bringing. And I don't know what is the cure. I don't know if I have the cure, but that's something to think about when we're looking at the work. Materially, my work is really different using plaster, or not plaster, actually yes it is plaster. They call it gesso here, that's why I get confused. But I'm still using magazines and things. So materially it's very different from the silver, but there's something about the portability of the silver that makes me think of my collages. And I also made this larger painting here, and it's the largest one I made here. It's about this wide. And again, this was using local materials. I used bed sheets and house paint and watercolor and oil paint, and I really hope that it's something that you enjoy to experience, and I would love to talk to you about it more in depth when we get in there. So that's where my studio is, right near you all. And I just wanted to say grazie mille a Duccio and Mima, and also Argo and Rocco, and thank you so much for all of you.